I never thought I'd be the kind of man who installs hidden cameras in his own home. But there I was, sitting in my car outside the courthouse, watching the footage on my phone for the 100th time, my ex-wife, laughing in our kitchen, her hand sliding up the chest of my boss, his mouth on her neck like she was his. The screen blurred. My hand shook. 14 years of marriage, and she'd been screwing him under my roof while I worked overtime to pay for that same roof. The worst part? I trusted them both. I should have known something was off when she started dressing up just to stay home. Lipstick at breakfast, new lingerie peeking from the laundry. Little things I brushed off because, hell, I was flattered. Maybe she still cared. But then the late night work calls started, the way she turned her phone face down like it was a reflex. The cameras were a last resort. Tiny things, hidden in the smoke detector above the dining table, tucked inside the bookshelf. I told myself it was paranoia. Until the first video loaded. There they were, tangled on the couch like teenagers, her legs hooked around his waist. The timestamp read 2:17 p.m., a Tuesday. My lunch break, when I texted her I couldn't make it home. The rage was a living thing, clawing up my throat. But worse than the anger was the humiliation. How long had they laughed at me? How many times had I sat across from him in meetings, clueless, while he smirked at some private joke? I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I called a lawyer. "Adultery's hard to prove," he said, drumming his fingers on the desk. I slid my phone toward him. "Will this do?" His eyebrows shot up. "Oh, yeah, that'll do." Now, standing outside the courthouse, I gripped the lawsuit papers tighter. She thought she could take half of everything? Fine. But I'd make sure the whole world saw why our marriage really ended. Let's see how my boss likes his name in the headlines. I didn't sleep that night. The footage played on a loop in my head, her fingers in his hair, his hands slipping under her blouse. I kept thinking of all the little moments I'd missed. The way she'd suddenly volunteered to bring me lunch at work, only to linger in his office. The way he clapped me on the back a little too hard, like he was marking territory. The next morning, I drove to the office like nothing was wrong. My boss, Greg, leaned against my desk, grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. "Big presentation today, Mike," he said, sipping his coffee. "Don't screw it up." I forced a smile. "Wouldn't dream of it." But inside, I was ice. Because I knew something he didn't. The lawsuit wasn't just about the house. It was about ruin. And I was just getting started. The office air conditioning hummed like a swarm of bees as I sat through the morning meeting, Greg's voice droning on about quarterly projections. My knee bounced under the table, my teeth grinding so hard I could taste enamel. Every time he cracked a joke, the team laughed on cue, good little corporate soldiers. I used to be one of them. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my lawyer. "Filed the suit this morning. She'll be served by noon." I nearly smiled. The meeting ended and Greg cornered me by the coffee machine. "You look like hell, Mike. Everything all right at home?" The concern in his voice was so convincing I almost believed it. His cologne, something expensive and woody, made my stomach turn. I could still smell it on my bedsheets. "Just tired," I said, pouring coffee I wouldn't drink. "Lydia's been distant lately." His eyes flickered for half a second. "Marriage takes work, buddy." I wanted to slam the carafe into his perfect white teeth. Instead, I nodded like the dutiful employee I'd always been. "You're right. Maybe we need a vacation." As I walked back to my desk, my phone lit up with a call from home. I let it ring. I knew what was coming. Sure enough, 3 minutes later my cell screamed to life again. This time I answered. "Mike, what the F-U-C-K is this?" Lydia's voice was shrill, the way it got when she'd had too much wine. Some process server just handed me papers at the damn grocery store. I leaned back in my chair, watching Greg through the glass walls of his office. You read them, then? You're suing me for the house? After everything I gave up for you? I lowered my voice. I know about Greg. Silence. Then a shaky breath. I don't know what you. 2:17 p.m. last Tuesday. Our living room. Another beat of silence. I have it on video, LYD. Every single time. The line went dead. Across the office, Greg's door flew open. He stormed out, phone pressed to his ear, face red. I watched him disappear into the stairwell, and knew exactly who he was calling. My fingers flew across my keyboard, pulling up years of emails between them I'd never noticed before. Lunch meeting after lunch meeting in his calendar. All those times I'd covered for him with HR when he worked from home. The printer whirred to life, spitting out page after page of evidence. Game on. The office lights flickered overhead as I sat at my desk, the printer still humming like a loyal accomplice. Each page that landed in the tray felt like another piece of armor clicking into place. I flipped through them, emails with coded language, calendar overlaps, expense reports for hotels I'd never heard of. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lydia. We need to talk. Alone. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. The last time she'd said that, she'd told me she wanted a divorce, claimed we'd grown apart. Now I knew the real reason. I typed back, talked to my lawyer. The 3 dots bounced. Then stopped. Then bounced again. Finally, you don't understand. It's not what you think. I almost laughed. Not what I think. I'd seen it. Watched it in 1080p HD while sitting in my car outside our house at 3 a.m., the steering wheel creaking under my grip. Across the office, Greg burst back through the stairwell door, his tie loosened and his forehead shiny with sweat. He didn't even glance my way, just beeline for his office, and slammed the door hard enough to make the admin assistant jump. My computer pinged. A new email from HR. Meeting requested. 4 p.m. Conference room B. Of course. Greg had gotten to them first. I leaned back in my chair, the leather squeaking under me. 14 years at this company. Promotions. Late nights. Sacrifices. All while they'd been laughing behind my back. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the flash drive I'd prepared that morning. Labeled in neat black Sharpie, evidence. The clock ticked toward 4 p.m. Let them try to fire me. I had a different kind of resignation in mind. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and corporate dread. The HR rep, Janice, a woman in her 50s with a permanent frown, sat across from me, her hands folded on the table like a disappointed nun. Greg stood by the window, his back to me, staring out at the parking lot. Mike, Janice began, we've received some concerning allegations. I kept my face blank. Oh. Greg finally turned. His expression was calm, but his left eyelid twitched. We think it might be best if you took some time off. Paid leave, of course. I tilted my head. Why is that? Janice cleared her throat. Greg mentioned you've been acting erratically. That you made some threats. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made them both stiffen. Then I slid the flash drive across the table. Before we discuss my behavior, I said, why don't we talk about what's on here? Greg's face went pale. Janice looked between us. What is this? I stood, buttoning my suit jacket. Proof that this company's CFO has been fucking my wife in my house for the better part of a year. I nodded to the flash drive. Emails. Texts. And, well, video. Greg's hands clenched. You're bluffing. I met his eyes. Am I? The room went dead silent. Janice slowly reached for the flash drive. I didn't wait to see her reaction. I just walked out, my footsteps echoing down the hallway. I had one more stop before going home. The local news station was only 6 blocks away. The news station lobby smelled like cheap carpet and microwaved lunches. A perky receptionist with too much eyeliner glanced up as I walked in. "Can I help you?" I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and set it on the counter between us. "I have a story your investigative team would kill for." She blinked at me, then at the drive. "What kind of story?" "The kind that gets ratings." I slid a business card across the counter, my real one, with the company logo still bold at the top. "Corporate scandal. Adultery. A lawsuit that's about to get very, very public." Her manicured fingers hesitated over the drive. "I'll need to get a producer. Tell them it involves Gregory Hargrove." Her eyes widened. Everyone in town knew the name. Local business leader. Philanthropist. The man who gave those insufferable TED Talks about ethical leadership. 2 minutes later, a harried-looking producer with salt and pepper stubble ushered me into a small conference room. "Start talking," he said. So I did. I told him everything, the late nights at work, the way Lydia suddenly started wearing perfume to bed, the gut feeling that had led me to those hidden cameras. When I mentioned the timestamps on the videos matched up with company expense reports for client dinners, the producer's pen froze mid-scribble. "You have proof?" I tapped the flash drive. "Emails. Bank statements. And yes, video." He leaned back, rubbing his chin. "This is nuclear." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I know." My phone blew up before I even reached the parking lot. "Lydia, Mike, please call me." "Greg, you're making a huge mistake." "Unknown number. Mr. Dolan, this is Channel 7 News." "We'd like to." I silenced it all. The house was dark when I got home. No sign of Lydia, just a half-empty wine glass on the counter, and the faint scent of her jasmine perfume lingering in the air. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and stood in the living room, right where the camera had caught them. The couch looked innocent enough, just floral upholstery we'd picked out together during happier times. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my lawyer. "Greg's legal team just called," he said. "They want to settle." I took a slow sip of bourbon, letting it burn all the way down. "Tell them I want the house. Full ownership. No buyout. And the job?" I looked around at the home I'd built, the life I thought I had. "I don't want it anymore." The next morning, Greg resigned to pursue other opportunities. By noon, the first news van pulled up outside. And by dinner time, Lydia was knocking on the door, her eyes red-rimmed, her designer suitcase rolling behind her like a sad little parade. "Mike," she whispered, "can we please just talk?" I stood in the doorway, the camera footage still playing on the TV behind me, and I closed the door in her face. The knocking turned to pounding, her fists hitting the door like a desperate heartbeat. "Mike, open the damn door! You can't just—" I turned up the volume on the TV. The local news anchor's polished voice filled the room. "Shocking fall from grace for prominent business leader Gregory Hargrove after explicit videos surfaced showing." Lydia's voice cracked through the wood. "They're going to fire me too, Mike. Do you even care?" I took another sip of bourbon, the ice cubes clinking like a toast to my own destruction. On screen, Greg's face flashed across every channel, his smug TED Talk grin replaced by a grainy still from my security footage, his hands where they didn't belong. My phone lit up with a call from the office. The CEO's direct line. I let it go to voicemail. The pounding stopped. Then, scraping metal. A key turning in the lock. I'd forgotten she still had one. Lydia burst in, her hair disheveled, yesterday's mascara smudged under her eyes. She looked at the TV, then at me, her chest heaving. "You bastard." The news cut to a live shot outside our gated community. 3 vans now. Reporters with microphones, cameras pointed at our house like snipers. I shrugged. "You picked the wrong side, LYD. She lunged for the remote, but I was faster, holding it above my head like we were kids fighting over toys. Her nails dug into my forearm. "You ruined us." Spit flew from her lips. "For what? Pride?" I grabbed her wrists, feeling the delicate bones beneath her skin, the same wrists I'd kissed 1,000 times before. "No," I said quietly. "For the truth." Her breath hitched. For a second, I saw it, the girl I'd married, buried under layers of lies and expensive moisturizer. Then it was gone. She yanked free, her eyes wild. "You'll regret this." The door slammed behind her so hard the framed wedding photo on the wall tilted sideways. I righted it carefully, studying our younger faces, her bright smile, my trusting eyes. Then I took it down and dropped it in the trash. Outside, the reporters surged forward as Lydia pushed through them, her suitcase wheels catching on the pavement. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone to the press." I smiled and typed back, "Watch the 10 o'clock news. There's more." Because I'd saved the best footage for prime time. The house felt different after Lydia left, not empty, just lighter, like the air itself could finally breathe again. I poured another drink and settled into my favorite chair, the one she always hated because it didn't match the decor. The local news played on mute while I scrolled through my phone, watching the chaos unfold in real time. Twitter had already dubbed it #CheaterGate. Memes of Greg's horrified face from the security footage were spreading like wildfire. Someone had even photoshopped him into the Titanic, arms outstretched on the couch instead of the bow of the ship. My lawyer called just as the clock ticked toward 10 p.m. "They're offering a settlement," he said. "Full ownership of the house, no contest. Greg's willing to sign over his shares in the company to avoid further embarrassment." I swirled the bourbon in my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "And Lydia?" A pause. "She's lawyered up. But with the evidence we have, she doesn't have a leg to stand on." On the TV, the news anchor straightened her papers, her expression shifting into that grave, "We have breaking news" look. I unmuted it. "Exclusive footage obtained by Channel 7 reveals even more shocking details in the ongoing scandal involving former CFO Gregory Hargrove." I leaned forward. The screen cut to a new video, one I hadn't shown anyone. Greg and Lydia, in our bed this time, laughing as she scrolled through her phone. "Think he suspects anything?" Greg's voice was tinny through the TV speakers. Lydia snorted. "Mike? Please. The man couldn't find a clue if it bit him in the ass." The glass in my hand cracked. I hadn't realized I was squeezing that hard. The news anchor's voiceover continued. "Sources confirm Mr. Hargrove has been terminated effective immediately, while the board of directors announces an emergency audit of company finances." My phone buzzed violently, call after call, text after text. Lydia. Greg. Unknown numbers. The office. I silenced them all. Then, a new notification popped up. "Security alert. Motion detected back patio." I frowned. The cameras were still rolling. Grabbing my phone, I pulled up the live feed and froze. Greg stood on my patio, his face shadowed, something glinting in his hand. Not a key. A gun. The doorbell rang. The doorbell echoed through the house like a warning. On my phone screen, Greg's silhouette loomed large against the patio glass, his free hand raised to ring again. The gun, small, dark, unmistakable, hung loose at his side. My pulse roared in my ears. The news still played in the background, the anchor now discussing legal ramifications, but all I could focus on was the man outside my door. The same man who'd sat at my dinner table, shook my hand at promotions, laughed with me over drinks, and fucked my wife in my bed. I muted the TV. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy. Another ring. Then a knock, hard, insistent. "Mike." Greg's voice was muffled through the door. "We need to talk." I didn't move. My phone was still in my hand, the security feed showing his every twitch. He glanced over his shoulder, toward the street where news vans still idled. Then he raised the gun. Not toward the door. Toward his own temple. My breath caught. "Open the door," he said, louder now. "Or I swear to God, I'll do it right here." The camera feed blurred as my hand shook. This wasn't part of the plan. The lawsuits, the humiliation, the fallout, yes. But not this. I forced myself to breathe. Then, slowly, I stood. The hardwood floor creaked under my weight. On the patio, Greg's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto the door like he could see me through it. One step. Then another. My fingers hovered over the deadbolt. Outside, Greg adjusted his grip on the gun, his finger dancing near the trigger. I turned the lock. The door swung open. Greg stood there, wild-eyed, his designer shirt wrinkled, his usually perfect hair greasy and unkempt. Up close, the gun looked even smaller, a snub-nosed revolver, the kind you could hide in a jacket pocket. He met my gaze, his voice cracking. "You ruined me." Behind him, a news van spotlight swung toward the house, bathing us both in harsh white light. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Greg's hand trembled. And I realized, with cold certainty, that I didn't know if he was here to kill me or himself. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other. Two men who had shared boardrooms and handshakes, now standing on opposite sides of a loaded gun. The spotlight from the news van painted Greg's face in stark shadows, making him look hollow. Haunted. His finger twitched against the trigger. I didn't flinch. "You really think this fixes anything?" A muscle in his jaw jumped. "You took everything." The sirens grew louder. Closer. I kept my voice low, steady. "No, Greg. You did that the first time you touched her." Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Rage? I couldn't tell. His grip on the gun wavered. Behind him, tires screeched. Red and blue lights strobed across the driveway. "Drop the weapon!" A cop's voice, sharp and commanding. Greg didn't turn. Didn't move. His breath came fast, shallow. I took a slow step forward. "Give me the gun!" His laugh was ragged. "Why? So you can win this too?" The cops were out of their cruisers now, weapons drawn. I could see them advancing in my peripheral vision, their footsteps crunching on gravel. One wrong move, and this ended in blood. I held out my hand. "It's over, Greg." For a second, I thought he might do it, pull the trigger, take us both down in some final, twisted act of defiance. Then his shoulders slumped. The gun clattered onto the patio stones. He didn't resist as the cops tackled him, cuffing his wrists behind his back. As they hauled him away, he locked eyes with me one last time. No words. Just silence. I turned and walked back inside, shutting the door softly behind me. The news was still playing. My face filled the screen now, a reporter speculating wildly about what led to this dramatic confrontation. I switched it off. The house was quiet. Finally. The moment stretched between us like a live wire, humming with tension. Up close, Greg smelled like stale whiskey and expensive cologne gone sour with sweat. His pupils were dilated, his breathing uneven not just from rage, but something deeper. Fear. The kind that makes men unpredictable. The gun trembled in his hand, catching flashes of the swirling police lights now flooding my driveway. I could see the precise moment he realized how badly he'd miscalculated the way his eyes darted to the growing crowd of neighbors spilling onto their lawns, to the news cameras now trained on us with hungry focus. "You stupid bastard," he hissed, spittle flying from his lips. "You've destroyed everything I'd built over 20 years. I kept my hands visible, my voice low. "You did that yourself when you couldn't keep it in your pants." A guttural sound escaped his throat. The muzzle of the revolver wavered between pointing at me and his own temple. Behind him, police officers took positions behind their open car doors, rifles trained on us both. "Sir, drop the weapon now." The lead officer's amplified voice made us both flinch. Greg's finger whitened on the trigger. Time seemed to slow as I noticed 3 details simultaneously. The safety was still on. His wedding band was missing. A dark sedan was speeding down our street, screeching to a halt behind the police line. Lydia tumbled out of the car before it fully stopped, her designer heels catching on the pavement. "Greg! Oh my God, Greg!" The distraction was all the police needed. 3 officers tackled Greg to the ground as Lydia screamed, the gun skittering across my patio stones. I watched numbly as they pinned him down, one knee digging into his spine while they cuffed him. "Mike, tell them it's a misunderstanding." Lydia clawed at the officer holding her back, her manicure snapping as she reached for me. "He's not well. He's—" "Ma'am, step back." An officer shoved her aside none too gently. Greg's face pressed into the concrete, his expensive suit tearing at the knees. When they hauled him up, there was blood trickling from his nose. His eyes locked onto mine with startling clarity. "You think you've won?" He laughed, a broken sound. "Wait till you see what comes next." As they dragged him toward a squad car, Lydia rounded on me, her chest heaving. "Happy now? Was this your big plan all along?" I studied her, the smeared mascara, the shaking hands, the raw desperation where her carefully cultivated poise used to be. The woman I had loved was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. "No," I said quietly. "My plan was to live my life with someone I could trust." The slam of the patrol car door punctuated my words. Lydia's face crumpled as Greg was driven away, the flashing lights receding into the night. A detective approached, notepad in hand. "Mr. Dolan, we'll need your statement. And that security footage." I nodded absently, watching Lydia sink onto my front steps, her head in her hands. The news vans were packing up now that the drama was over, but I knew this was just the beginning. Inside, my phone buzzed incessantly on the kitchen counter. The CO, HR, unknown numbers, and one text from my lawyer. "Greg's been embezzling. They found the records. Call me ASAP." I looked back at Lydia's hunch form through the window. Somewhere beyond her, the first hints of dawn lightened the sky. The game had changed again. And this time, I held all the cards. The police left just after sunrise, taking my security footage and a 2-hour statement. Lydia had disappeared sometime during the night, back to her lawyer, I assumed. The house felt eerily quiet, like the calm after a storm. I poured coffee and opened my laptop. Emails flooded my inbox. Colleagues, reporters, even old college friends who'd seen the news. But one subject line stood out. "Urgent, board meeting today 10 a.m. Sent to Greg's address. And CC'd to me. I clicked it open. "In light of recent events, the board has called an emergency session to address gross misconduct and financial irregularities. Mr. Hargrove's access has been revoked. Mr. Dolan, your attendance is requested." I stared at the screen. Financial irregularities. My lawyer's text came back to me. "Greg's been embezzling." A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I wasn't surprised to see my lawyer standing there, suit crisp despite the early hour. "You've seen the news?" he asked, stepping inside. "Which part?" I deadpanned. "The armed standoff Or the fact that my boss was stealing from the company? He didn't laugh. The board's panicking. They want to settle with you before this gets worse. How much worse could it get? He handed me a folder. This is a preliminary audit. Greg's been siphoning funds for years. Faked invoices, shell companies, the works. I flipped through the pages, my stomach tightening. The numbers were staggering. And they're just now noticing? They noticed, he said grimly. They just didn't care until it became public. I tossed the folder onto the counter. What do they want from me? Your silence. And your cooperation. I barked a laugh. After everything? He leaned in. They're offering full severance. 2-year salary. Stock options. And, he hesitated. And? A non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, they won't pursue any claims against you for the unauthorized surveillance. I stiffened. That footage just exposed a criminal. Which is why they're being generous. He met my eyes. But you need to decide now. The board meets in 3 hours. I walked to the window. The news vans had been replaced by paparazzi, their long-lens cameras trained on my house, like vultures circling. Greg had tried to destroy me. Lydia had betrayed me. And now the company wanted to buy my silence. I turned back to my lawyer. Tell them I'll be there. The office was a ghost town when I arrived. Whispers followed me down the hall, employees ducking into cubicles as I passed. Greg's office stood dark, his nameplate already removed from the door. The boardroom fell silent when I entered. 12 faces stared back at me, men and women I'd worked with for over a decade, now looking at me like I was a lit fuse. The CEO cleared his throat. Mike, thank you for coming. I didn't sit. Let's skip the pleasantries. A nervous glance around the table. Then the slide deck began. Financial reports, timelines, damage control strategies. Every slide confirmed what I already knew. Greg had been stealing. And they'd ignored it. When they finished, the CEO folded his hands. We're prepared to offer you a very generous. I don't want your money. The room froze. Then what do you want? The CFO asked. I leaned forward, bracing my hands on the polished table. I want the truth. Publicly. No NDAs. No cover-ups. That's not how this works, the CEO snapped. It is now. I straightened. Because if you don't, I go to the SEC. And the press already has plenty of questions. The room erupted. I walked out before they could counter. My lawyer caught up to me in the parking lot. That was a hell of a power play. I unlocked my car. They'll call within an hour. He shook his head. You're risking everything. I looked back at the building, the place I'd given my loyalty, my time, my life to. Some things are worth more than money. As I drove away, my phone rang. Unknown number. I smiled and answered. The voice on the other end was smooth, practiced, the kind of tone that belonged to high-priced crisis managers. Mr. Dolan, I represent the board. We'd like to discuss your demands. I merged onto the freeway, the morning sun glinting off the glass towers downtown. I didn't make any demands. A pause. Then tighter. What will it take to resolve this? I could almost see them in that boardroom, sweating through their custom shirts. The embezzlement was bad enough, but the cover-up? That would bury them. 3 things, I said. 1, full whistleblower protection. 2, an independent audit made public. 3, I tightened my grip on the wheel. Greg gets prosecuted to the fullest extent. Silence. Then a muffled conversation. Finally, the board accepts. But we need you to come back and sign. No. Another pause. I'll have my lawyer review everything, I said. And if one word is out of place, I walk straight to the Wall Street Journal. I hung up before they could respond. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. My lawyer sat in the corner booth, 2 files laid out in front of him. "They caved," he said as I slid in. "Full immunity. The audit goes public next week." He tapped the second folder. "And this is Lydia's latest offer." I didn't touch it. "What does she want?" "To walk away clean. She'll drop all claims to the house if you don't pursue damages." I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. 14 years reduced to a transaction. "Tell her yes." My lawyer blinked. "Just like that?" I thought of Greg's gun trembling in his hand. Lydia smeared mascara on my doorstep. The board's panicked whispers. Some wars aren't worth winning forever. Some you just need to survive. Just like that. The moving truck arrived the next week. I stood in the driveway as they loaded the last of Lydia's things. The gaudy vase from her mother, the designer shoes that had cost half a paycheck, the framed photos of vacations I now knew she'd spent texting him. She watched from her rented Mercedes, sunglasses hiding her eyes. When the truck pulled away, she rolled down her window. "You really did destroy everything, didn't you?" I studied the woman I'd loved, really looked at her, for the first time in years. "No," I said. "You two did that all on your own." Her mouth tightened. Then the window rolled up, and she drove away. The house echoed that night. I walked from room to room, stripping away the remnants of a life that wasn't mine anymore. The security cameras came down first, then the guest room sheets. Finally, the wedding album, page by page, into the fireplace. Flames licked at our smiling faces, curling the edges black. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall. I poured a drink and sat in the silence. Alone. At peace.